Hello there, and welcome to another video for the King's Square Reviews. This recap is for Daredevil Born Again Episode 7, titled Art for Art's Sake. This will be a spoiler-heavy recap and review, so if you haven't watched the episode, do that and then come back for my take on it. Art for Art's Sake brings the Muse storyline to a close, but the real crux of the episode is a further shift in the status quo of the series. Matt Murdock's decision to put the Daredevil suit back on and resume his vigilante career is going to cause major issues in his life, as it should. One of the reasons I liked Daredevil comics as a kid and teenager was that Matt's path was never an easy one. Every decision he made in either his daytime persona or his nighttime career as the Man Without Fear had consequences. Smart storytelling makes those consequences personal to drive the narrative further. The strain on Matt and Heather Glenn's relationship has been building for the past couple of episodes, and here we see it starting to fray even further. Heather finds the bruises on Matt's back while he's showering and begins to question it, only to be stopped by a renewed passion from Matt. We soon see this was but a brief respite as Matt tries to explain his recent change in behavior and fails miserably. Heather's right to call out Matt that his past trauma is surfacing, affecting his decision-making. Matt's lies are paper thin, though, and I can see in Margarita Laviva's performance that Heather is starting to pull away from Matt, even when they admit that they love each other. Leave a comment below if you figured out this was the moment that their relationship was doomed. I hope it wasn't just me. Mayor Fisk is also disturbed by the return of his old nemesis. Wilson's not always been known for his capacity to control his impulses. Vincent D'Onofrio focuses Fisk's barely contained rage when speaking with Buck about Matt's past interference. Fisk had managed to create a criminal empire that benefited many people, but at the expense of an even larger number of people. Matt's intervention destroyed that previous network, forcing Fisk to rebuild, an enterprise his wife took over during Wilson's absence. There's a moment where Fisk spits out the word righteousness when talking about Matt's past efforts. And it almost feels like Fisk is vomiting that word up rather than simply saying it. Buck warns against using the powers of the mayor's office to go after Matt directly, but this is the kingpin we're talking about. Fisk isn't going to let Matt resume his vigilante work without consequences. Matt's decision to resume his activities also doesn't sit well with Cherry or McDuffie. The exchange between the two old friends is one born out of both love and frustration. Matt hasn't fully thought through the consequences of putting the horns back on. Cherry, on the other hand, doesn't want to admit that sometimes Matt's methods are needed, especially against a threat like Muse. I think Cherry is also concerned about the Punisher wannabes among the NYPD who are now forming the anti-vigilante task force under Fisk's direct control. There's also the continuing subplot with Luca the mobster making moves to take over Fisk's operations now that Wilson is the mayor. Luca meets with Vanessa, and it appears the two of them come to some kind of understanding. Vanessa is cagey, even when she's alone with her husband, so she practices a form of silent committal to Luca's plan. It's just a background event until we reach the final moments of the episode. I have to admit that when the slightly off-kilter young man asked Heather if she was accepting new patients in the second episode of the series, I was not expecting it to pay off in this manner. As it turns out, the young man is Bastian Cooper, a child of privilege who also turns out to be Muse. We see Bastian arriving for his next session with Dr. Glenn at the same time that Detective Kim is presenting evidence to Fisk that has narrowed down Bastian as a potential suspect. Matt also learns about the connection between Muse and Heather when he returns to Muse's lair from the previous episode. Seeing Matt knock out Powell with his billy club is supremely satisfying, but that's merely a footnote, as we soon learn that Cooper is obsessed with Glenn, having painted multiple portraits of her. Before getting into the finale of the episode, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you're enjoying my content. I also have a Patreon. The link for that is in the description below. I'll be posting exclusive reviews to Patreon, starting with an episode-by-episode review of The Residence on Netflix. And if you're still not sick of hearing my voice, I have a different YouTube channel called simply The King's Square that focuses on TTRPG content, like my series How to Run Cyberpunk Red. Thanks for indulging me in my shameless self-promotion. The finale for Episode 7 ratchets up the tension as Muse begins what he undoubtedly thinks will be his masterpiece. Heather realizes too late that Bastion is dangerous, and she is unable to escape her patient's clutches. When she comes to, Bastion has put on his real face, the mask he wears as Muse, to begin extracting her blood to paint his next canvas. Hunter Doohan has the unenviable task of working under a face mask, relying solely on his eyes to convey the emotions of his character, but he does a fantastic job of capturing the madness inherent in someone like Muse. Bastion's obsession is rooted in his misguided perception that Glenn's advice has unlocked his artistic potential. It's clear that at some point Cooper's connection to reality was severed almost completely, and he's been dangling by a thread for a long time. Matt's surveying of Muse's previous lair is enough to draw the attention of the anti-vigilante squad, who use Muse's portraits to figure out Dr. Glenn is the next target. This gives Fisk an idea, hoping to kill two birds with one stone. By this point, it's clear that Fisk knows Matt Murdock is involved with Heather Glenn. And with the understanding that Matt knows Glenn is Muse's next target, Fisk deploys the anti-vigilante squad to Glenn's office in the hopes of taking out both Muse and Daredevil. It doesn't quite work out as intended, but it does allow Fisk to shift his plans in a new direction. The battle between Daredevil and Muse is suitably brutal. Muse isn't on the same level as Matt in terms of fighting ability, so he uses every dirty trick he can to subdue Matt and continue his work on Heather. All of this plays out as the anti-vigilante task force arrives outside not too long after Matt makes his entrance. The decision to have Heather be the one to kill Muse, with his own gun no less, was an interesting one. I hadn't anticipated Muse to die in this episode. My original thought was that Muse would be beaten down and Matt would escape just as the cops burst into the office, but that wasn't what happened. With Muse dead, Matt says Heather's name and quickly stabilizes her before leaving. That one moment of concern is going to come back at some point, probably when Heather finally learns the truth about who Matt really is. True to form, Mayor Fisk insists that his task force was responsible for putting down Muse, even though there's ample footage captured on people's phones of Daredevil arriving and leaving. But Fisk wants his people to take the credit, largely to further discredit vigilantes and make himself out to be the strongman type of leader that New York needs. Even Bibi Urich gets pulled into perpetuating this form of propaganda by Daniel, who strong-arms her into complying by threatening to remove her access to the mayor's office. Fisk takes his victory lap, but all does not seem like it will end well when we see Vanessa texting someone an address. It soon becomes apparent that Luca is the recipient, and he heads out to this rendezvous. Wilson is enjoying a quiet dinner alone in a restaurant, his back to the door. The level of confidence it takes for someone with his background in the underworld to do something like that is about as large as the Empire State Building. Just as Luca is about to pull off his assassination attempt, Buck steps out from the shadows and puts two in Luca, ending the upstart's threat in brutal fashion. The sequencing of these events feels like an attempt by the show to seed the idea that Vanessa is turning on Wilson, but that doesn't sit right. I find it far more likely that Vanessa orchestrated this hit with Wilson and Buck to eliminate a potential long-term threat to their efforts with the Red Hook port project. Overall, Art for Art's Sake is a solid episode of TV. The conclusion to the Muse arc felt a bit rushed, but to be fair, Muse is a secondary antagonist in the grand scheme of things. In effect, Muse simply served as a catalyst to begin the downward spiral of the ongoing feud between Murdoch and Fisk. It was inevitable that these two could not escape their true nature, as shown by Matt donning the mask again and Fisk coordinating the murder of Luca with Buck and his wife. Neither man can truly walk away from who they really are, no matter how much of a mask they put on for the public. The home stretch is upon us with Daredevil Born Again, and the final 2 episodes promise to be quite eventful. Once again, thank you for taking the time to listen to my recap of Daredevil Born Again Episode 7. Please show your support by hitting the like and subscribe button, as well as the bell icon to get updates when I drop new content. And check out my other stuff on the web through the link tree in the description below. Have a great day.